There's nothing you need to do right now. Nothing you need to remember. Nothing you need to solve. No place you need to be. Whatever the day has asked of you, it has asked its last. You are here now, and here is quiet. And the quiet is yours entirely. Find the position your body most wants to be in. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw go soft. Let your hands open just slightly if they've been holding themselves closed. There is no effort required in this. You are simply allowing yourself to be heavy, to be still, to be at rest in the particular warmth of wherever you're lying. Notice your breath, not to change it, only to feel it. The slow rise, the slower fall, the small pause at the bottom before it begins again. In a moment, I'm going to take you somewhere very far from here, high above the ordinary world, above the weather most people know, above the low forests and the valley roads, and the long ribbons of light in distant towns. I'm going to take you to a place where the air is thin and luminous, and the stone is older than any name we've given it, where one small building stands against the mountain's shoulder, warm lit from within, patient as the mountain itself. All you have to do is listen. Let the words arrive, the way light arrives through a high window, unhurried, diffuse, finding every surface softly. You don't need to hold on to any of it. You can let each image come and then dissolve, the way breath dissolves into cold air. You are safe. You are warm. The night is holding you gently. Let's begin. The path that brought you here is already fading from memory, and that is exactly as it should be. Somewhere below, there were switchbacks carved into pale stone, and before that, a meadow where short grasses bent in a wind you could actually hear. And before that, still the valley floor with its rivers threading between the trees. But all of that is very far below you now, and the mountain's shoulder has closed around you like a gentle hand. And here, just here, you have arrived. The Mossprint Refuge stands before you. It is a small building, smaller than you might have expected. A single room carved and fitted into the basalt itself, so that two of its walls are the mountain's own dark stone, and the other two are timber and iron, bolted against the cold with long black rivets that have been there so long they've grown a faint crust of mineral rust the color of cinnamon. The roof is low and heavy, made of the same basalt in flat slabs, mortared with something pale, lime perhaps, or the residue of very old ice. And on the roof, and on the stone walls, and on every horizontal ledge and sill, moss. Deep, patient, velvet green moss, the kind that takes decades to grow to any thickness, the kind that has been here since long before anyone thought to put a press inside this mountain's shoulder. There is a single porthole window set into the timber wall, round and thick-glassed, framing a sky that is still holding the last faint copper of the day in its western quarter. The rest of the sky above you is already giving itself over to the deep, depthless blue that comes just before the first stars decide to show themselves. At this altitude, the stars arrive early, and they arrive bright, but that is for later. For now, the light is still changing, still softening, still doing its slow, unhurried work. The door is open. Not wide open, ajar, perhaps a hand's width, and from the narrow gap comes a warmth that reaches you immediately, and with the warmth comes a smell. Two smells, layered, inseparable from each other, and from this place. The first is the cold mineral scent of the basalt itself, ancient and dry and faintly metallic. the way a stone smells when it has been warmed through an entire afternoon and is only now beginning to release that warmth back into the cooling air. The second smell is softer and darker and comes from inside. The smell of linseed ink, warmed, not quite burning. The rich, oxidizing sweetness of it rising from somewhere near the press, which you cannot yet see, but which you can already feel, the way you feel a fire before you see it, as a vague radiation, a gentle pressure of warmth against your face and hands. You step through the doorway. The floor inside is stone, the same dark basalt, worn smooth in the center, where Hael walks the same path each day. Rougher near the edges, where the wear hasn't reached. Your feet find it, and it is solid, completely solid. Solid in a way that travels up through your legs and into your chest and says, nothing is moving. Nothing here is uncertain. This is a floor that has held its ground for a very long time, and it will hold it a while longer, and you are welcome to stand on it and let it hold you too. The room is lit by 2 lanterns. One hangs from a hook near the door, a small iron lantern with clouded glass that casts the light in a soft, diffuse ring, not bright enough to read by comfortably, but bright enough to see the room in its warm amber entirety. The second lantern sits directly on the press bed, closer to where Hael works, and its light is more concentrated, more deliberate. A pool of orange gold that falls across the compositing tray and the scattered type and the broad cream surface of the half-prepared press bed, making the newsprint glow, making it look almost edible, almost like something from a dream of warm bread and late evenings. Hael is there, standing at the compositing table, which is a long, low shelf of worn timber running beneath the porthole window. Hael doesn't look up when you enter, not out of unfriendliness, but out of the particular concentration of someone in the middle of a quiet task that requires all of their gentleness. The broadsheet's text has been typeset in small sections through the day, each line a slow conversation between Hael and the type case. That wide, divided tray of small lead letters and numbers and punctuation marks, each resting in its shallow compartment, each waiting to be lifted by padded tongs and placed in the compositing stick, letter by letter, word by word. Hael sets a letter now. You can hear it. A small, clean sound, the faint click of lead against lead as a new character settles into place in the stick, nudged with a thumbnail until it sits flush and square. Then another. Then the quiet movement of the tongs returning to the case, hovering for a moment over the compartments, selecting, lifting. The sound is remarkably unhurried. Each letter placed as though it were the only letter in the world, as though the entire universe had contracted to this one small motion, this one small sound, and then expanded again in the silence between. You find a low stool near the wall, a 3-legged thing of dark wood, its seat worn to a shallow bowl by long use, and you sit. The stool is exactly the right height. The warmth from the press reaches you here. The chill from the floor, the night chill that is already beginning to seep in beneath the stone, collects around your ankles. But above that, the air is warm, warmer than you expected. And the smell of the ink and the basalt and the faint ghost of cedar. There is cedar somewhere, in the wooden type case perhaps, or in the old shelving, mingles into something that is not perfume and not incense and not quite anything you have a name for, but that your body recognizes immediately as safe, as belonging. The press stands in the center of the room. It is very large for this small space, an iron hand press of an old design, its frame and bed and platen all heavy, deliberate, everything oversized in the way of things built to last centuries rather than decades. The iron is dark, almost black in most places, with a fine grain of rust and oil worked together into a surface that is no longer merely metal, but something closer to a geological formation, a stratum of use and time. The frame rises above your head. The press bed, a flat iron surface on which the paper will sit, over which the inked type will be rolled, under which the platen will descend, is currently resting at its far position, rolled back from the impression point, patient and still. The press has been warming all afternoon. Hael lit the small iron stove in the corner, a rounded, compact thing, seated on a basalt slab, its flue running straight up through the roof, well before noon, and the heat it produced has been absorbed slowly, gradually, into the iron mass of the press itself, so that now, touching the frame, which you do, just resting your palm against the cool, dark side of it, you feel warmth stored there, like warmth stored in bread just out of the oven. Not hot, not uncomfortable, but residual, deep, the warmth of something that has been loved by heat all day and is only now beginning to release it. The type waits in its case. Hundreds of small lead characters, each in its own compartment. The lowercase letters worn smooth on their faces from years of use. The capital letters used more rarely, and therefore crisper, still showing something of the precision of their original casting. There is a whole alphabet there, and another alphabet, and numbers, and M dashes, and small decorative ornaments, a leaf, a simple star, that Hael uses occasionally to separate sections of the broadsheet. You can see them all from where you sit, though in the lantern light they are small and dark, and the individual characters are hard to distinguish. And it doesn't matter. It is enough to know they are there, each in its place, waiting quietly for the evening's work. The porthole window shows you the sky changing. The copper has gone now entirely. The western quarter is a deep and luminous indigo, and above that, the sky opens into black blue of the kind you only ever see at altitude, the kind that is not the black of a closed room, but the black of infinite distance, of space that goes on and on and on above you, in a way that is not frightening, but is instead deeply, unreasonably calming, as though the sheer scale of it puts everything else in proportion, makes every worry and every urgency and every small tightness of the chest very small indeed. The first star appears, then two more, nearly simultaneously, as though they'd been waiting for the first to commit. Hael sets another letter into the compositing stick. Click. And another. Click. The stove settles with a soft iron sound in its corner, and the lanterns throw their steady orange gold across the room, and the basalt walls radiate their slow mineral warmth. And outside the stone, the high wind moves against the mountain. Not violently, not with any force you'd call threatening, but steadily, persistently, the way the wind always moves at altitude, finding every seam in the rock and flowing through it with a sound like distant breath, like the mountain breathing in its sleep. You let your shoulders drop a little further. You hadn't noticed they'd risen again. They do that. But But there is nothing here that requires your shoulders to be anywhere but down, resting, at ease. Nothing here needs defending. Nothing here is going to ask anything of them. The click of the type, the warmth of the press, the mineral cold of the stone through the soles of your feet, the orange glow on cream-colored newsprint, the sky deepening, letter by letter, outside the round, thick glass of the porthole window. You are here. You are completely here. And the evening is just beginning. Hael moves with a slowness that is entirely without self-consciousness. This is not the slowness of someone performing patience, not the deliberate slowness of someone trying to demonstrate calm. It is simply the natural pace of a person who has been doing this long enough that there's no other pace available to them. The work sets the tempo. The type sets the tempo. Each letter requires a particular attention. The tongs opening just so, the fingers guiding just so, the placement and the nudge, and the small release. And you cannot hurry any part of it without risking a wrong letter, a misaligned line. And Hael has set wrong letters before and spent the time correcting them. And from that experience has learned that the correction always takes longer than the care would have. And so, the care is what remains. The compositing stick is a small steel tool, narrow, held in the left hand, a 3-sided channel, open at the top, into which the type is placed face up in a line. When the line is full, it will be transferred to the compositing tray, the broad, flat galley where all the lines of the broadsheet will be assembled in sequence. And there, each line will sit against its neighbor, and the whole text will gradually take shape, not as words on paper, but as words in metal, reversed, mirrored, everything backward and upside down, until the press makes its impression, and the paper receives the image, and the world is turned right again. There's something about this that you find, without quite articulating it, deeply restful. The idea that the words exist first in this inverted state, that meaning begins in reversal, that the text must be backward before it can be true, feels like something you've always known, but never had a name for. It feels like the way sleep works, perhaps, the way you have to pass through a kind of dissolution before you can arrive anywhere worth arriving. Hael lifts a letter from its compartment. You watch the tongs cross the case to the compositing stick. The letter settles. Click. The broadsheet's subject this week, as every week, is what the mountain has noticed. You know this because there is a small handwritten note pinned to the timber above the compositing table. Notes from the morning's observation walk, written in a careful, compressed script on the back of a folded piece of cream paper. The words are small, and you can't read them from where you sit, but you can see the general shape of the note, its unhurried lines, the occasional pause in the writing where the pen was lifted for thought. The subject this week, the lichen. The south-facing stones of this ridge, Hael noted on the morning walk, are showing 3 varieties of lichen that weren't visible last autumn. Not entirely new to the mountain. They've been here longer than any record, these lichens. These slow gray-green and rust-orange and pale sulfur-colored organisms that grow perhaps a millimeter per year, that can survive temperatures that would kill almost anything else, that photosynthesize in light so thin it would seem to barely qualify as light at all. But new to these particular stones, this season, in this arrangement, and that, to Hael, is worth recording. Not because anything is being asked of the record. Not because anyone is waiting for this information. Simply because the mountain has changed in this small way, and the change deserves a line of type. And the line of type deserves to be set by hand, one letter at a time, with padded tongs, with care. You think about the lichen as Hael works, the gray-green kind especially, the one that grows in long, flat sheets that look like torn paper, as though someone has been gluing scraps of pale green tissue to the rock in a pattern no human geometry would produce, but that the rock receives and holds without protest. You think about the patience of that, the slow, patient work of the lichen, working in millimeters over decades, and you feel, without quite meaning to, some of your own patience returning to you, some of the cellular memory of what it is to be slow, to be unhurried, to grow at the pace the conditions allow, to not require anything faster. The smell of the ink has deepened slightly as the stove's heat continues its work. Earlier, it was only a background note, something you registered and then forgot about in the way. You forget about background music once you've placed it. But now, it is more present, warmer, the oxidizing linseed richer as the temperature in the room climbs another degree or two above the afternoon's level. The stove still burning slowly, the press radiating its stored warmth, the walls giving back the last of what they absorbed from the sun earlier in the day. The ink smell is not sharp. It is not chemical in any aggressive way. It is closer to something organic, something earthy, something that belongs to the same family of smells as the cedar of the typecase and the mineral cold of the basalt. All of it old, all of it slow, all of it patient. Hael finishes a line and transfers it. The transfer from compositing stick to galley is a careful motion, a two-handed thing, one hand bracing the type in the stick, while the other slides the whole assembled line onto the galley surface. Then a slow withdrawal of the stick, while the fingers keep the letters tight against their neighbors. And then a small adjustment, the finest nudge, and the line is placed. Hael examines it for a moment, not anxiously, but with the unhurried attention of someone who knows what correct looks like and simply wants to confirm it. A breath. Then the compositing stick goes back to the left hand, and the tongs go back to the typecase, and the next line begins. While Hael works, you find yourself noticing the room more slowly, more completely. The shelves along the back wall, the one that is wholly basalt, wholly mountain, hold the life of this place in its accumulated form. There are rows of wooden-type blocks on the upper shelf, the decorative kinds, each a carved wooden stamp designed to print a single image. A small mountain silhouette, a simple compass rose, a stylized silk moth with its wings spread. These are older than the metal type and show it. The wood is dark with handling and ink. The surfaces of the carved portions still crisp enough to print, but worn at the edges in a way that suggests years of use, hundreds of uses, thousands of touches. The gritty texture of the grain worked into a particular smoothness that is different from the smoothness of unworked wood in the way that a river stone is different from a quarried one. The handling has become part of the object. The use has made them what they are. Below the type blocks, there are shallow drawers for supplies, ink discs wrapped in damp cloth, spare timpan sheets, the small tools of registration and adjustment, and between the shelves and the floor, a stack of finished broadsheets from the past seasons, bound loosely in a cord of natural fiber, lying flat, the topmost one faded at the edges from whatever light reaches this room in the day. A record of what the mountain has noticed, season by season, going back further than you can guess. Lichen and Silk-Moth and cloud color. The date of first snow. The arrival of migratory birds. The way ice forms on the south-facing pool in the basin just below the ridge. In concentric rings, Hael recorded one winter. The way a tree records its years. And that single observation sits in its drawer in its proper season and waits, as the mountain waits, as all things here wait, with no urgency at all. The wind outside is doing its patient work. You can hear it when the stove falls quiet. A low, sustained sound, not a whistle. More like the sound of breath moving through a very large instrument, or the sound of someone reading to themselves in another room. The words indistinct, only the rhythm reaching you. The rhythm of a long, slow text being read without hurry. The stone walls are very thick, basalt, 2 feet of it in the timber walls, and the full depth of the mountain in the carved ones. And the wind can move against them all it likes without finding any purchase, without making anything tremble or shift. The room is entirely still inside its own weather. Hael pauses. Just a pause. Not a stoppage. Not a problem. Only the pause of someone who has reached a natural rest between one phrase and the next, and is taking a moment to consider. The hand with the tongs is held lightly at waist height. The eyes move to the handwritten note above the compositing table, reading or rereading, or simply looking in the way that sometimes precedes a decision that is made below the surface of conscious thought, and only surfaces, fully formed, when it's ready. Then the tongs lower again, and the hand moves to the case, and the next letter is chosen, and the evening continues. The click of type against type, the warmth of the press against your right side, the faint, luminous blue of the sky in the porthole, deepening still, the stars multiplying now. 4, 6, 9. More than you can count easily from this angle. Each one a hard, bright point, impossibly clear at this altitude, where the air is too thin and too cold to carry much of the diffusion that softens stars in the lowlands. Here they are, what they actually are, very far away, very bright, very old, and completely indifferent. And that indifference is not cold. It is restful. It means nothing is expected. The stars are not watching you. The mountain is not watching you. Even Hael is not watching you. Only working, only tending the quiet task, only doing the slow, beautiful thing that this room exists to hold. You settle a little more completely into yourself. The stool is comfortable in a way that simple furniture is sometimes unexpectedly comfortable. Not through any cushioning or design cleverness, but simply through the fact of its solidity, its willingness to bear your weight without negotiation. The wood has absorbed the room's warmth. Your hands rest in your lap. After a while, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 30. Time moves differently here, and you've stopped tracking it. Hael lifts a wooden-type block from the shelf. The Silk-Moth lifts it with both hands, turns it over to examine the face. The carved wings spread in a patient geometry that someone's hands shaped once, long ago, and that Hael's hands have been touching ever since. The block is dark with old ink, the accumulated impression of many seasons' worth of broadsheets, and the grain of the wood is visible at the edges where the knife didn't reach, the actual woodness of it exposed in a pale stripe, and the carved face is a deep ink black, and the whole object in Hael's hands is the weight and warmth of a thing very long used and very well kept. Hael sets it into the galley, in the upper right corner, where the broadsheet's header decoration always goes. The block settles with a sound just slightly different from the click of metal type. A softer sound, a duller sound, wood against the galley's iron floor. A sound like a door being carefully closed. You can feel your breathing has slowed, not because you've asked it to, because the room has asked it to, quietly, without pressure, the way slow music asks your heartbeat to follow it down, the way warm water asks your muscles to let go. The lichen, the Silk-Moths, the cloud color, a season recorded in lead type, set by hand, one letter at a time, in a room where the walls are the mountain itself. There is something here that is not efficiency, and is not productivity, and is not any of the words that usually attach themselves to work. There is something here that is closer to devotion, to the kind of attention that is its own reward, to the practice of marking that a thing existed, that a thing was noticed, that the noticing was worth a line of type and an evening's careful work. You find that you want nothing right now. You notice this as a fact, the way you might notice the temperature of the air or the color of the light. There's nothing you need to reach for, nothing you need to resolve. The wanting has gone quiet, the way the sky goes quiet after all the color has left it, and what remains is only the deep blue fact of space. Hael works. The stove burns low and steady. The press waits, its iron frame holding the day's warmth in its molecular memory, patient as the mountain that holds the room, that holds the press, that holds the ink, that will, in an hour or two, become the record of what a season left on the south-facing stones. The porthole window glows a dark and luminous blue, and the stars have multiplied beyond counting. In time, after several more lines of type have been set, after several more transfers from stick to galley, after the sound of click and settle and pause and click has become as regular and as unremarkable as the sound of the stove and the sound of the wind and the sound of your own slow breath, Hael locks the form. This is a specific operation, a technical one, but it has the quality of a ceremony. The composed type, all the lines of the broadsheet, the text set in its backward metal columns, the Silk-Moth block in its corner, the small decorative star ornament that separates the Lichen section from the Silk-Moth section, from the brief note about the morning's cloud color, all of it sitting in the galley in its inverted order, waiting. Hael takes the chase, an iron frame, rectangular, exactly the size of the press bed, and places it around the composed type with a gentleness that is itself a kind of ceremony, guiding the frame down over the type and seating it on the galley surface with a sound that is the sound of iron finding iron, low, final, satisfying, in a way that lands somewhere behind the sternum. Then the quoins, small wedge-shaped pieces of metal fitted into the gaps between the type and the inner edges of the chase, are tightened with a key, slowly, evenly, working around the form in a sequence that distributes the pressure gradually, so that no single line of type bears more than any other. Hael turns the key a small amount on one side, then crosses to the opposite side, and turns the key there an equally small amount, and back again, and around again. The whole thing tightening imperceptibly by degrees. The way ice forms, the way a plant root works into a crack in stone, not with force, but with persistence, with a kind of patient incremental pressure that changes things forever without ever seeming to rush. The form is locked. Hael lifts it from the galley, carefully, 2 hands, testing the weight and finding it settled, the type holding itself together under the pressure of the coins, not a single character shifting, and carries it to the press bed. The press bed, extended to its open position, receives the form. Hael places it carefully, aligns it by eye, and by the small registration marks scored into the press bed's surface long ago, adjusts it by fractions. There is a patience in this adjustment that is not perfectionism. It is not anxious, not driven by a fear of error, but is instead the natural patience of someone for whom precision is a pleasure rather than a pressure. A pleasure like the pleasure of a word exactly right, of a note exactly in pitch, of a stone set flush with its neighbors in a dry stone wall. Now, Hael takes the ink. The ink disc is wrapped in its damp cloth, preserved from the morning's preparation, and when the cloth is unwrapped, the smell intensifies immediately, the linseed deepening, filling the small room with its warm, organic presence, the oxidized richness of it settling over everything like a second, softer warmth. And you breathe it in without thinking, the way you breathe in the smell of rain or the smell of wood smoke, involuntarily, fully, the whole chest opening to receive it. Hael places the ink disc on the ink table, a small marble slab attached to the press frame, dark with the staining of many years, and takes the brayer, which is a hand roller with a wooden handle worn to a deep shine at the grip. The brayer is rolled across the ink disc in slow, even strokes, distributing the ink across its rubber surface, and the sound of this is almost nothing, a faint pressure sound, a nearly silence, something between a hiss and a sigh. Then the inked brayer moves to the form. Hael rolls it across the type with the same slow evenness, covering the lead characters in a thin, precise coat of ink. Not too much, not too little, the coverage built in overlapping passes, each pass perpendicular to the last, until the typeface holds a film of black that is even across every letter, every ornament, every carved wing of the Silk-Moth block. You can see the letters in reverse now, inked and distinct against the gray metal of the form. And even from where you sit, you can see that they are correctly, beautifully set. The spacing even, the lines parallel, the whole composition sitting in its chase, with an assurance that is the direct product of Hael's long attention. A single sheet of the cream-colored newsprint is cut now from the stored roll. The paper is heavy, toothy, made from cotton rag, and sized with something that gives it a slight stiffness even before the ink touches it. Hael holds the sheet briefly in both hands, letting the warmth of the hands communicate to the paper. Which sounds strange, and perhaps is strange, and is also exactly what you do when you've been doing this long enough to know that cold paper receives ink differently than tempered paper, that every material has its preferences and its best conditions, that working with those preferences rather than against them is not indulgence, but wisdom. The sheet is laid on the press. There is a timpan, a frame of stretched oiled paper, that the sheet is laid against, and pins to register its position precisely. And when it is placed just so, and the timpan folded over it. The sheet disappears behind the timpan and is enclosed, held, the way a letter is enclosed in an envelope, the way a sleeping thing is enclosed in its warmth. Hael rolls the press bed under the platen. The press bed moves on its rails with a sound that is lower and rounder than the click of type. A slow, rolling sound, iron on iron, not sharp, but full and resonant, lasting a second, lasting 2 seconds. And then the press bed is under the platen, and Hael's hand finds the press lever. The press lever is iron, wrapped at its grip with cord that has been rewrapped so many times that it is thick and soft and slightly oval from the shape of a hand that has gripped it thousands of times. It is the diameter of a generous fist. It extends from the press frame at roughly chest height, and it describes an arc, when pulled, that requires the whole body to participate. Not just the arm, but the shoulder and the back and the legs. A slow lean into it, a committed slow lean, and as the lever comes through its arc, the platen descends, gradually, gradually, closing the distance between itself and the press bed. And there is a moment, a particular brief moment, when the resistance increases, when the platen finds the paper and the paper finds the type, and the lever requires more from you, and you give it, and the impression is made. Even from where you sit, you can feel the moment of impression. Not literally. You are not at the lever. You are on your stool by the wall. But as a shift in the quality of the room's silence, a slight concentration, as though everything in the room has taken a small breath together and then held it for the fraction of a second that the platen is at full impression, that the ink is transferring from metal to paper, that what was backward and reversed is becoming its mirror, its truth, its right way around self. Then the lever moves back through its arc, and the platen rises, and the press bed rolls out on its rails, that low, round iron sound again, full and resonant and 2 seconds long, and Hael's hands find the timpan and open it. The broadsheet is peeled from the press. This is a sound that belongs entirely to this room and this moment. The soft exhale of paper releasing from the press bed, the slight hiss of it, the sound of something that has been held releasing into the air. Not a dramatic sound, not a sound that calls attention to itself, but a sound that makes the air feel slightly different after it, slightly more complete, the way a piece of music feels different in the moment after the last note than it did in the moment before. Hael holds the broadsheet at its top corners, arms extended, and looks at it, not with pride, not with the expression of someone who has completed something difficult and is now assessing the difficulty they've overcome. Simply looking, the way you look at something you've made, and in the looking, understand it for the first time, understand that it has its own existence now, separate from your making of it, that it is no longer a plan or an intention, but a thing. The ink on the newsprint is the deep, wet black of very fresh print, not quite dry, still carrying the sheen of the linseed, still almost luminous in the lantern orange of the room. Against the cream of the paper, it is striking. The silk-moth in its corner with wings spread, the lines of small type below it, the census of Lichen, the note on silk-moth migration, the single line about the color of the morning clouds, and the whole of it receiving and reflecting the lantern light in a way that makes the ink look not just dark, but warm, the way anything dark looks warm in sufficient amber light, Hael carries the broadsheet to the drying line, a length of thin cord strung between two hooks driven into the basalt wall, and clips it there with a small wooden clip. The broadsheet hangs straight, the ink cooling, drying in the warm air of the room, the cream paper with its black type turning slowly from a thing just made into a thing already becoming a record, already beginning its long, patient life as an object that will eventually join the stack in the corner, bound with natural fiber cord, held. The room is very quiet now, quieter than before, though nothing has changed. The stove still burns, the wind still moves against the stone, the lanterns still throw their orange gold across every surface. But the completion of the impression has changed something in the quality of the quiet, made it a little fuller, a little more settled, the way a room feels different once everyone in it has arrived and the waiting is over. Hael wipes the brayer clean with a cloth that is dark with old ink, each pass of the cloth a slow, even stroke, caring for the tool the way the tool cares for the work. The marble ink table is cleaned next, the cloth moving in slow circles, taking up the excess ink with a patience that matches everything else here. The form is still locked in the press bed. It will be cleaned last, after the ink on the broadsheet is fully dry, when Hael can be sure no further impression will be needed. And so for now, the press rests with its form in place, inked and spent and warm, the whole of it radiating its gentle stored heat into the room. You find that your eyes have been half closed for some time without your noticing. Not entirely closed. You've been watching Hael work, watching the room, watching the portholes deepening blue, but half closed, the way eyes close during music, during the long, quiet middle section of something, when the body has decided that full wakefulness is no longer required and has begun the slow process of releasing the day. The stove's low burning, the mineral scent of the basalt, the faint, lingering warmth of linseed ink, now beginning very slowly to shift as the ink on the broadsheet dries, the sharp edge of it softening, the smell becoming something drier, older, something more like the smell of the finished records in the stack in the corner, the smell of ink that has become part of paper, that has given up its wetness and its rawness, and become simply text, simply record, simply the patient notation of what a season left on the south-facing stones. The chill at the floor has deepened as the night has come on, but above the floor the room is warm. The stove and the press between them have been gentle all day, and the warmth they've established is stable now, not rising, not falling, simply holding, the way certain kinds of care hold, quietly, completely, without display. You are held in this warmth. You are held in this room. The mountain is all around you, 2 feet of basalt and more, older than any name, indifferent and solid and permanent. And its permanence is not cold. It is simply steady. And you can rest against that steadiness if you want to. You want to. Hael has moved to the small table near the stove, a lower table, separate from the compositing shelf, used for the other quiet work of this place. A small iron kettle sits on the stove's top surface, its side beginning to tick with heat. And Hael fills 2 cups from a small earthenware jar of dried leaves, mountain herbs, something aromatic and slightly sweet, something that when the hot water hits, it will fill the room with a smell like winter hay, and high-altitude flowers, and the particular clean brightness of something that has grown in thin air all its life. Hael sets one cup on the stool beside you. Doesn't speak, just sets it there, the ceramic warm against the side of the stool, the small curl of steam beginning to rise from the lip of the cup and turn in the lantern light. The gesture contains everything: welcome, company, the quiet acknowledgement that you are here and that your being here is entirely agreeable, that there is no need for conversation or explanation or any exchange at all beyond the simple shared fact of a warm drink in a warm room at the end of a worked evening. You lift the cup. The ceramic is warm against your palms, and the steam rises against your face, and the smell of the herbs reaches you. Yes, winter hay. Yes, something floral and high and clean. Something that is the mountain's own scent translated into warmth and vapor. And beneath that, the dry mineral note of the basalt, always present, always underneath. The ground note of everything here. The tea is mild and clean on the tongue. No sharpness, no bitterness. Only the faint sweetness of the dried flower and the slight savory earthiness of the herb, and the warmth of it moving from your mouth, down through your throat, and into your chest, where it settles like a small additional warmth among the warmth already there. The warmth of the room, and the stove, and the press, and the stone. You hold the cup in both hands. You watch the broadsheet hanging on its drying line, the ink already less wet-looking, already settling into the paper, becoming permanent, becoming part of it. You watch the lantern light move across the cream of the paper and the black of the type, the silk moth in its corner with wings spread, patient, encoded, complete, a record of what the mountain noticed. 3 varieties of lichen on the south-facing stones. The Silk-Moths passing through on their migration, the particular color of this morning's clouds. And you don't know what color that was. You weren't there for the morning walk, but you imagine it. The low, luminous gray-white of cloud at altitude, tinged perhaps with a faint rose that comes just after sunrise, when the light is still oblique and the clouds are thin enough to let some color through. Or perhaps a deeper gray, the gray of cloud that has come up from the lowlands carrying moisture. A heavier gray, a gray that means change in weather, that the mountain records without alarm, without any judgment about whether change is welcome. It is. It is simply noticed. It is simply set in type. Hael drinks from the other cup and looks at the broadsheet and says nothing, and the stove makes its small iron sound. The wind outside, very far outside, moves along the ridge. You can feel the last of the day's holdings releasing from you, the residue of effort and attention, and all the small, invisible work of being a person in the world. The work that doesn't show and isn't rewarded, and still costs something. All of it softening now, loosening from wherever it has been held in you, in the shoulders and the jaw, and behind the eyes, in the small, braced places. The teacup is warm in your hands. Your eyes are almost closed. Later, much later, or perhaps not that much later, time here has become unreliable in the most pleasant way. Hael banks the stove. This, too, is a ceremony. The iron door of the stove opened carefully, with a folded cloth to protect the hand. The glowing interior regarded for a moment, the level of the coals assessed. A piece of hardwood added, not a big piece, not enough to build the fire back up to its afternoon height. but enough to sustain it through the cold hours at a lower, safer, longer burning level. The new wood settles among the coals with a soft collapse of light, small sparks rising and dying immediately. And then the door is closed, and the stove returns to its steady, low murmur, its presence in the room continuing, its warmth continuing, the same warmth, only lower, only quieter, only more patient. Hael goes to the porthole window and looks out. You can see Hael's profile against the deep blue luminosity of the glass, still and quiet, looking at whatever the mountain shows at this hour. The stars, perhaps, the dark ridge against the dark sky, the absence of any light below to interfere with the perfect blackness of the high-altitude night. You don't need to see it yourself. You can feel it, the night outside, the great, cold, open space of it, the depth of sky above the mountain, the stars in their untroubled multiplicity, and then the walls, 2 feet of basalt and more, between you and all of that, and the warmth, and the stove, and the orange lantern light, and the smell of cedar and basalt, and the drying ink on the hanging broadsheet, and the mild, clean warmth of the tea still moving through you, settled now into a general softness throughout your entire body. Hael turns from the window, turns down the near lantern, just turns down, not out, the flame lowering to a smaller point of light, and the room darkens by half, and in the darker room the colors change. The cream of the newsprint goes to gold. The gold of the iron press goes to amber. The amber of the stone walls goes to something deeper, something closer to the color of the inside of a closed eye. The second lantern is left burning, the one near the press. Its light still falls across the broadsheet on its line, across the form locked in the press bed, across the typecase with its hundreds of patient characters, each in their compartment. The room breathes in its quieter light. Hael prepares the night's bed, a narrow cot against the basalt wall, pulled out from beneath the shelving where it folds away during the day, a flat wool mattress placed on it, a heavy blanket unfolded and laid across. The blanket is dark and thick and very plain, and the small ceremony of its unfolding, held at 2 corners, shaken once, very gently, to open its folds, and then laid down, and then smoothed with both hands, the palms moving from center to edges, is a ceremony, you know, the ceremony of the end of a day, of a work completed, of a body that has done its patient work and is now ready to be still. You know this ceremony. You are in it. The stove breathes in its corner, very low, very steady. The far lantern throws its single point of amber across the room, the ink on the broadsheet almost entirely dry now, the silk-moth in its corner, with wings spread, standing out crisp and black and final against the cream. You're breathing. Notice it. In and out. In and out. The mineral cold of the air near the floor, curling around your feet, and the warmth above it, and the warmth above that, and the warmth of the tea still traveling in you, and the warmth of the wool, if there is wool wherever you are lying, and the warmth behind your closed eyes, the particular warmth that lives there, familiar, yours. The sound of the press lever, if you wanted to hear it again, would be exactly the same sound it was an hour ago. The velvet resistance of the cord-wrapped iron grip, the slow arc, the platen finding the paper. You don't need to hear it now. It has done its work tonight, and the work is hanging on the line. and the mountain's record is made. And everything that needed to happen has happened. And everything else can wait until morning, including all of it. The stars outside the porthole, hard and bright and countless, very far. The stove, low and steady. The ink, drying. The mountain, breathing, all around you. The lichen on the south-facing stones. 3 varieties, new to these particular surfaces, new to this particular arrangement, growing at their particular millimeter-per-year pace, entirely unhurried, entirely absorbed in the slow, quiet work of being lichen on the mountain, in the cold and the light, which is all they are, which is entirely enough. The Silk-Moths, somewhere in the dark above the ridge, moving on their migration, their wings. If you could see them, if you were out there in the cold with enough light, patterned in the pale greens and silver grays of things that live at altitude, things that know how to be invisible against the particular light of high places, moving without hurry, or with the only kind of hurry that belongs to them, which from the outside looks like drifting, the click of type against type, which is not sounding now, which has sounded enough for one evening, which you can still hear if you want to, in the quiet, in the way the body holds sounds after they've stopped, the last click, and the small settling, and the pause before the next, the orange glow on cream-colored newsprint, the dry mineral scent of cold basalt, the distant whisper of the high-altitude wind moving along the ridge, finding the seams in the old stone, speaking its long, low, continuous word that isn't a word, but has the rhythm of one, the rhythm of a long, patient text being read aloud to no one in particular, or perhaps to everyone. You are warm. You are held. The mountain is around you. The room is quiet. The work is done. Breathe in and out. The stove, the stone, the ink, the warmth, the lichen on the south-facing stones, and the Silk-Moths on the dark air above the ridge, and the single broadsheet on its line, and Hael already still on the narrow cot, the blanket smoothed, the breathing already slow and deep and regular, in the way of someone who falls asleep without effort, because the day has been full, and the work has been honest, and there is nothing left undone. There is nothing left undone. The lantern's single point of amber, the stars, the mineral cold, very far below you, and the warmth here, and your breath, and your breath, and your breath. The press, warm, still, the mountain, very old, very patient, here, here, here. you.